this actually happened. So I'm going to tell you a story about hockey. And since I'm Canadian, what the hell, I might as well tell you a story about hockey. My son played hockey. He still plays hockey. He was a pretty good hockey player. And my wife and I used to go watch him play hockey. There was an arena just down the street from us. And there was a nice neighborhood league there. And so they'd sort the kids into teams, and then they'd let them play a few demo games. And if any team was getting stomped flat, or any other team was winning too much, then they'd rebalance the team so that they were approximately equal in skill. So that was the sorting of the teams. So, and then they were on their teams, and then they'd play, 15 games during the regular season. They'd have a little tournament to see who won. And it was really good. It was a good, friendly league. And so my son's team was in, I think it was the championship game, if I remember correctly. And there's one kid on his team who was the best player on the team by quite a margin. He was very fast on his feet. He could skate rings around a lot of the kids. He was good at stick handling. He was a good hockey player. But he had some problems, this kid. One problem was he wouldn't pass the puck. Now you think, well, why the hell should you pass the puck if you're the best hockey player? Which is pretty much what he thought. And the answer is, well, you're part of a team, right? You want to be the best person on the team, fair enough, and you want to win the hockey game, but you also want to, what? Make your teammates better players. How's that? Maybe you even want to make the people on other teams better players. I mean, I know that's going a little bit too far, but you certainly want to make your teammates better players. And you might think, well, why would you do that? Because if they're better, then maybe you won't be the best. Well, that's a boneheaded way of looking at the world. Because first of all, if you amp up the competition around you, maybe that'll motivate you to be even better. And it's a hell of a way to win by making everyone else lose. That's not much of a victory. And so if you have any sense, you pass the damn puck, even if you're the better player. You especially do that. Let's say you've got a comfortable 2-goal lead. Well, then maybe you can risk taking the time away from that specific game to build up the confidence and ability of your teammates. And then maybe everybody thinks that you're a bit of a leader and they make you team captain. Not even so much because you're the best hockey player, but because, well, because why? That's the question. Okay, so we're watching the game, and it's pretty exciting, and it's a real close game, and it's like 3-3, and it's a minute left, and the other team zips down the ice and scores a really brilliant goal. And so my son's team loses. Except that they were in the championship, and it was a really good game. So, whether or not they lost is not all that obvious. They lost that game. But, there's a broader context to take into consideration. Okay, so this kid, the star, goes off the ice, and he takes his hockey stick and he smashes it onto the cement, and he's all angry because as far as he was concerned, he was robbed. And maybe that's because of his useless teammates, who he didn't really spend any time helping, by the way. And maybe it's because the referees were unfair, and who the hell knows why, but it wasn't fair. And his idiot father rushes over to him and consoles him on his loss and supports him in his notion that he was robbed. And I thought, you unspeakable son of a bitch. Because he was an arrogant narcissist, and it was way more important to him that he had a son who was a star than that he had a son who was a good person. And that's absolutely inexcusable. He made the wrong choice. He sacrificed his son's soul in part to help him save face for a hockey game. That's not acceptable. Okay, so here's what you tell your children. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it matters how you play the game. And so that's what the father should have told the son. And he should have meant it. And even better, he should have known what it meant. But who knows what that means? Because you tell your children that, and maybe they're not so happy because they lost a game, and they look at you like you're an alien. And they think, well, what the hell do you mean by that? Because obviously it matters whether you win. And it does matter whether you win. So what is it that you mean when you say that? And your kid asks, well, what do you mean by that? And you go, well, I don't know what it means, but it's a good rule. So what do you mean by that? Here's what you mean. And it relates to rule 5, which is don't let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Because other people will dislike them then. And you don't want other people to dislike your children unless you want your children to inhabit a world where everyone dislikes them. And maybe you do because you don't like your children. And maybe you don't like your children because you let them behave in ways that makes you not like them. And so the way you take revenge is by not correcting them so that other people will punish them because you don't have the courage to discipline them. And if you think that people don't play that game, then you don't know much about people because they play that game all the time. All right, so it matters how you play the game. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. Let's take that apart. Well, so the first thing is, and this goes back to the idea of the hierarchy. Is order a hierarchy? And the answer is no. It's a set of all hierarchies. Or you could say it's the set of all possible hierarchies. Because, you know, in a society at a given time, there's hierarchies that function, but that transforms, and then there's new hierarchies that function. The specifics of the hierarchies change, but the fact of the hierarchies remains. And so you can imagine a hierarchy as a metastructure that consists of a multitude of possible hierarchies. And that's going to change as life continues. And so what you want for your children is not to be the master of a hierarchy. You want for your children to be the master of the set of all possible hierarchies. Because then no matter how things change, they're ready. You say, well, how is it that you get ready for things to change? And the answer is, play so that people will invite you to play. Right, and there's a rule for children, for raising children. And it's a rule. One of the things you can do with your children, this is something good for men, because men are more likely to do this than women, although women can do it too, but men are more likely to do it. It's really good for children to engage in rough and tumble play. Play fighting. First of all, if you have children and you've played with them physically, you know that they absolutely love it. They will rough and tumble play with you until you are completely exhausted and they're not even vaguely ready to quit. They have an inexhaustible hunger for it. And they like to be pushed to the edge. So I knew this when I was a new father, partly because I read work by a man named Jaak Panksepp, who was a genius, an affective neuroscientist, one of the world's great neuroscientists, perhaps the world's greatest neuroscientist, although there's 4 or 5 people that might compete with him. He wrote a book called Affective Neuroscience, Emotional Neuroscience, which is a work of real genius. He discovered the play circuit in mammals, because there's a separate play circuit in mammals, a specialized circuit. And he did a lot of work on rats, and showing that in order for a rat to become socialized, because rats are highly social, they had to engage in iterative bouts of rough and tumble play. And here's a cool thing. It's a ridiculously cool thing. So, and this has to do, in some sense, with the postmodern critique of the patriarchal tyranny. So, if you take 2 juvenile rats, males, and you imagine you give them an opportunity to play. So you throw 2 of them into a little play arena and you let them wrestle. Okay? The next time that you bring them to the same place, you can measure how much work they'll do to open the door to the arena. How many times they'll push a button, say, to open the door, or how hard they'll pull if you tie a spring to their tail. And so you can get an estimate of their motivation, because the more motivated they are to play, the harder they'll work. And rats will work really hard to play. So you know that they want to play. I mean, assuming that you're willing to accept the fact that if you work for something, you want it. It's like an operational definition. So rats will work to play. Now, if you let the rats out in the play arena, and one rat is 10% bigger than the other, then that rat will win. You might say, well, what does winning mean? And rats wrestle like people wrestle. They even pin each other. And they manifest play behavior to begin with, like dogs playing in a park. You know how a dog looks when it wants to play? It sort of hunkers down a little bit, looks up at you, like expectantly, kind of move back and forth, which is like, okay, human, I'm ready to play. And if you have any sense and you know how to play, then you look at the dog and you sort of go like this, and the dog goes like this, and you cuff the dog, not too hard, and the dog bites you, not too hard, and then you can play, and you're both happy with that. And kids can do that with dogs because kids understand dogs, and dogs and kids know how to play. If your dog can't play, then you should not own a dog because you're not smart enough to own a dog. So it's true. And if you have a dog that can't play, then don't have a kid. Right. It's true.